So thank you everybody for coming today. We're really pleased you were able to get this on your calendar so quickly. We know that there was a safety incident here at the practice not long ago, and it was asked that the team come together, the QI consultant and providers and office manager and everybody come together to kind of debrief from the case and understand exactly what happened and how we can prevent it from happening again. And we're really thrilled again that you've been able to take the time for this. So just to introduce myself, I'm Jonathan. I'm your quality improvement consultant, for those of you who don't know me. And just so there's some new faces in the room, so if we could just go around the table and have you introduce yourselves, that would be really wonderful.
Sure. I'm Katie Middle. I'm a nurse here at Playtime Practice Pediatrics, and I will be the leader for this meeting today.
I'm Dr. Ada Mant. I've been in practice here for 15 years.
I am Amy Avoy, and I'm the practice manager here.
I'm Dr. Jonas Change, and I'm one of the pediatricians here, and this is actually about one of my patients.
Great, thank you.
All right, so at this point, Jonathan has asked me to go and review the case of what happened over this weekend.
So can I jump into one sec? Dr. Change, could you just keep time, if that's okay, over the course of the meeting? We want to be respectful of your schedules and make sure we're out on time. I'll jump in and facilitate as needed. And Amy, if you could just take notes from today so we can circulate them after the meeting and make sure everybody's on the same page, that would be great. Sorry.
All right, no problem. So as we know, Dr. Change had a patient who was admitted last Wednesday to the hospital. There was good communication from the PCP to the hospital regarding the patient's case. The hospital was in good communication with Dr. Change when the patient was discharged on Friday. The patient was instructed to come in on Saturday to the office for a follow-up visit, and the discharge summary went directly to Dr. Change rather than the practice. Dr. Mott was not informed that the patient was supposed to come in, and the patient did not show up on Saturday, so Dr. Mott wasn't able to be in touch with the patient to follow up. On Sunday, the father called the covering doctor, Dr. Mott, spoke a little broken English, and Dr. Mott sent the patient to the ED, and subsequently the patient was sent to the PICU. Because of the broken English the father was speaking, we believe they didn't understand the discharge order that was given when they left the hospital on Friday. So on Monday, when Dr. Change came into the office, he found out that the patient was readmitted to the PICU. Dr. Change at that point contacted patient safety and informed them of what had happened with this patient over the weekend. So at this point, would we like to go over our quality improvement tool of the fishbone diagram?
Absolutely, that would be great. Is that in line with how things happen? We want to make sure we capture the correct information with the process.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Yep.
So what we've done here is a root cause analysis, and this is something that we do with many safety events that are brought to the attention of PPOC. And we've been able to draw this out with the help of many of the professionals in the office. So we thank you all so much for contributing to this. So this is the structure of a fishbone diagram here. What you're going to see in black at the head of the fish is ultimately what the problem was. So in this case, it was no closed loop communication around the discharge, which, based on talking to the providers and many staff members, what we believe contributed to the major challenge of the readmission to the PICU here. So we've broken this down into 6 major categories. The 5 Ps, which you may be familiar with: process, professionals, patients, purpose, patterns, and we actually added one for technology because we felt it was important to highlight some potential issues or challenges around technology that are ever present in the practice and potentially contributors to this. So each line here that you see are potential contributors to the ultimate problem at the head of the fish. We also like to call this an Ishikawa diagram, should you want to have some fun. So starting with the process, it looks like there were challenges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through this very, very quickly and just take a few moments at the end to make sure we haven't missed anything, and we can put a few more things on here if anything you feel is missing. So the potential problem around the handoff to the PCP, there was no handoff to the PCP. to the covering MD. There was no teach back with the family, so a lot of times what we like to see happen is that the staff in the hospital actually helps to make sure the family's understanding what's going on, and it sounds like that was potentially a problem. There was no follow-up process post-discharge, so it sounds like some information was sent and there was no formalized process in the practice to support the discharge. Under professionals, there was some challenge around PCP and covering MD communication. Obviously, Dr. James, we want to respect the fact that you have some time off, but there were some challenges around ensuring there was communication in your absence. Those are mainly the issues that we spotted, the contributing factors to this ultimate challenge. Does this make sense to everybody?
Yeah, the purpose of the fishbone diagram, as we reviewed with Jonathan, is that you think of all the things that might have caused this to happen. So if there was anything else you can think of that may be added to any of those domains, we can talk about that.
I don't see why we need these fancy diagrams and all these things mapped and unmapped and looped and re-looped. Seems to me it's just common sense. If the patient is sick, they pick up the phone, they call, and we triage them appropriately. I didn't do anything wrong.
Right. This is absolutely not a shame or blame thing. It's just to find out what gaps were involved that would happen. Not to point fingers at anybody, but just to see where we can improve things to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. It's not something that is specifically your fault or Dr. Change's fault or the practice's fault, but just to see how we can improve processes.
Well, if he had even called me on Friday to tell me this patient was coming, how do we know we would have been able to get hold of them on Saturday anyway? You expect me to go out to their house? There are patients that we can get hold of, and they come in, and we give them the right medicines, and we tell them everything they need to know about what's going on, and they still end up in the hospital. Sometimes there's just a bad outcome.
Dr. Mann, I appreciate your passion around this, and I think these are all great points, and I think what we need to do as a group is really figure out where there may be opportunities to tweak practices so that it's easier for you and maybe not fully on the shoulders of the patient and the family who's going through what may be a pretty stressful time after recently being discharged from the hospital. So,
Well, when I came into the office on Monday and found out the patient had been readmitted, I felt terrible. I mean, I knew that I had, that part of that rested on me to not have communicated clearly as I was going away for the weekend. But it was helpful to do this exercise because I realized it wasn't just all about me, that there's some processes that we could really strive to, improve, that there's some gaps in the way that we communicate and do things, and I think that would provide a safety net in a case where I didn't, fully do everything I should have.
Okay, so in order to improve this process so something like this doesn't happen in the future, what would you like to focus on out of these domains as our test of change that we can try and implement in the practice? And we can start small. It doesn't have to be a big fish. We can start with a small goal and see how that works to improve things. So is there anything on this diagram that you think might be somewhere good we can start?
I think that the follow-up process post-discharge, I think, is really good, probably a good starting place.
What would you like to improve in our processes so far that we haven't practiced? And even Dr. Mark, if you have any
Well, I take that one because there are a few things connected with that. There's, the notification is going to one of us rather than all of us.
Agree. We should come up with a way where staff or whoever, people in the everyone in the practice is involved, so things don't fall through the cracks. And maybe a fax comes to a general, fax machine, and we disseminate it to either, the PCP and the covering doctor to help facilitate that or something. But to get everybody else more involved than just the one doctor who might not be here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a quick question, Dr. Mon. If there's a process that supports kind of communication to all of the practice members, even at times when other providers may be out of the office, and it prevents a readmission or prevents you having to, make separate phone calls, would that be something you're in support of?
Well, I guess it would be a good idea. I mean, as the covering doc, I was pretty surprised to get this phone call, and it was hard to understand the dad, and I hadn't put the dialed up to the phone, and my goodness, he was in terrible respiratory distress. And I think if I at least knew about the patient ahead of time, maybe we could have given them a call. So I think at least that part of it would be a good idea. But do all the doctors in the practice and all the secretaries and everybody up front need to be bothered? I don't know if I'm so convinced about that yet.
So one of the opportunities here that we've heard working in other practices across the organization is that there's been some centralized email addresses that we could create.
And then will it go to maybe if it just went to the staff that was going to be the covering staff, or all the staff that was on with me over the weekend, and if they could have tried to reach out to the patient, that might not have been a bad idea.
Amy, do you think that's something we could set up, a general email
I
address?
definitely think we could, and I think it'd be helpful.
And maybe what we can do once that email address is set up is get everybody that might be involved in that email address kind of in the room together and help understand exactly what the process is once that address is set up.
Another good thing would be to let the whole team know that this email has been addressed. So again, it goes back to our end goal of closing the loop of communication with the practice.
Dr. Change, is that something you would be comfortable with?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, I think any changes we can make that will help us avoid this type of situation.
Well, great. I think that's a great start. You can start with this small test of change. And so for next steps, Amy's been taking notes, so she's going to summarize those excuse me, and send it out to the team. And so we'll start with this new email in the next week or so, hopefully before the next weekend, so we can get this in place before the next covering doc starts. And then we can see if there's other areas we want to improve on, too, in the future.